All right, so we are now recording. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Susan Winkler. I am our technology librarian here at the Champaign Public Library. Thank you for joining us today for taking pictures on your smartphones and tablets. With me today, we have Rebecca. And we are actually both, Rebecca Van Dusen, I should say your last name. We are both actually going to teach today's section. So we're going to team teach today. So I'm going to start with our introduction and some photography basics. And then we're going to switch to Rebecca, who's going to do the live demo of the different devices and icons and everything. Okay. So I do want to give you a little bit of information about Zoom in case it's your first time in Zoom, or there are a couple of new features that have been added. So down at the bottom of your screen, there should be on the very far left is going to be your speaker, your volume, so that you can adjust your volume and speaker. In the middle, there's going to be a chat button. And if you want to, you can type any questions you have to us in the chat, and then I will relay them to Rebecca, or Rebecca will relay them to me, depending on who's actually doing the teaching at that moment. We also have the ability to unmute you. So if you want to be unmuted, please raise your hand, and there's a little raise hand icon down there just by the chat button. And that'll let us know that you have a question that you want to speak verbally rather than typing into the chat. Okay. The other thing I want to mention is we have a new feature that Zoom has just enabled called live transcripts. And at the bottom of your screen, you should see a little thing that says live transcripts, and it has a little CC in a little box. If you tap on that, you can tap on subtitle and see live transcriptions of what we're saying. Generally, it does a pretty good job. And then you can also hide those. If you don't want to see them, you can hit the button that says hide subtitle. Okay, so just wanted to let everybody know that that also exists. And you can move that around on your screen too. If you hold your mouse over it, you can drag and drop it. So if you want to put it above or below, you can do that too. All right. Okay, I think that's everything I want to cover. Other than the library we are now open. We're open from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, Friday and Saturday from 9 to 6, and then on Sunday from 12 to 6. You can come in, our study rooms are available again for 2 hours per day per group. Meeting rooms are also available, and you can call us to schedule meeting room use. All of this information is also, of course, on our website, which is champaign.org. And I think Rebecca's going to pop that in the chat for us.
Yep, doing that now.
Great. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and get started and share our PowerPoint for taking pictures today. All righty, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, so can everyone see the taking photos with smartphones and tablets?
I can see it.
Okay, I'm hoping you can. Perfect. All righty. So we're going to go over some photography terms and tips. This is going to help us get that foundation of the things that we can control with our phone cameras. And then we'll actually explore the phone and tablet cameras. Rebecca is going to give us an actual tour, how to find the apps that control it, how to look at the different icons and what they mean. We will spend a brief moment talking about how to edit images with your native camera app. And when I say native, that just means it's the one that's already on your tablet or smartphone. You're welcome to download other ones in the future if you'd like. And we do have some other workshops where we spend more time talking about how to edit photos. But here we're more talking about how to actually do the mechanical side of taking the pictures. We'll also talk about some accessories that exist for smartphones and tablets. And then I'll give you some examples of some other resources that you can reach out or look for. And then we'll talk about, the very final thing is we'll talk about the considerations of things that we think are the best tips for taking cell phone photography. Okay, so I usually start by saying the best camera you have is the camera you have with you. And for most of us in today's society, that means it's the cell phone. And cell phone cameras have actually improved quite a bit over the last probably 5-10 years with how nice the images are that they can produce. And again, that's because cell phone designers and manufacturers have realized that since everyone is carrying them around and they do take pictures, it's a good idea to make them the best pictures that they can. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about some things that control how you take an image and how the image will appear and what you can set and change. Now, these are all things that you can set and change with cameras that are like DSLRs, which are digital single lens reflex cameras, which basically means just the bigger cameras. There's also point and shoot cameras and mirrorless cameras and all of these other cameras that you can use where you can control most of these functions and settings. A few of your smartphones have a pro mode where you can control some of this stuff too. But I do want you to know this stuff because it is kind of a good foundation going into understanding how cameras work. Okay. So the first thing is your shutter speed. And the shutter speed controls two things. It controls how bright your image appears and whether or not your action is going to be frozen or blurred. So if someone's running, and yes, I'm running in the little video here, pretending to run, and you're taking a picture of it and you use a really fast shutter speed, that's going to stop the action, frozen in motion like this. If you use a slower shutter speed, then you're going to see the blur of the motion of the hand moving up and down, okay? So basically what happens is the camera shutter, or the curtain, opens up to let the light pass through the lens, and then it exposes the sensor to the light, and then it closes. And that's the shutters. That's what happens with the shutter. So the shutter speed is how fast or how slow that curtain opens and closes and how long it stays open, okay? So the length of time that the shutter is open, that's the shutter speed, okay? It's measured in length of a second. So a quarter, 1/4 is a quarter of a second. So you can do really fast or really slow, okay? It works with two other settings to control, well, it works with aperture to control exposure. Exposure is how bright or dark your image appears. So that's why shutter speed can help control that too, okay? And don't worry too much if a lot of the stuff, it's not so much that you're gonna absorb it right away, that's okay. I just want you to get this kind of foundational idea that you can freeze motion or you can blur motion. So if you look at these two, with a long shutter speed, the water over here is gonna be blurred as it's traveling down those rocks. And the short shutter speed, for example, with the dolphin here, you can see each of these individual drops of water as they're coming out of the water, okay? Okay, so your aperture, that's how big the hole is in the middle of the lens that the light is passing through. So if you think of your human eyes and how when you walk into a room and the light is off and you turn the light on, if you look in a, say the bathroom mirror, when you turn the light off and then you turn it on and you see your iris in your eye will contract and expand to let more light in, whether the light is off or the light is on. That's a little bit like how the f-stops and aperture control what happens with the lens and the camera. So when your eye encounters a lot of light, it contracts and makes it the iris smaller. And when it encounters a lot of darkness, it's going to expand to try to let more light in so that you can see better and not bump into things. The large opening in the lens means that more light gets in and it makes a brighter image. A small opening in the lens means that light gets in and it results in a dark, and that less light gets in and it results in a darker image. So I have a little guide here. If you see the image on the right here, where there's a large aperture here, and you can see you can barely make out any details. Everything is very bright. This is actually kind of popular, or at least it was popular maybe like a year or two ago on a lot of the social media channels to have a filter that made all your images kind of look like this, where it was kind of this very bright and not so much detail. The one on the far right, you can see here, you also can't see a whole lot of detail, but it's very dark. So the medium aperture here in this particular image is probably the best one because you can get the detail in the sand and of the water and the sky, and also the sign on the lifeguard stand, okay? So aperture is usually expressed in numbers known as f-stops, and some of your phones will have this capability. So this is also why we're mentioning it, because if you see on your phone that there's an F and then a slash and then a number, that's an f-stop, okay? So the confusing part about aperture is that the small numbers are larger openings. So f16 is actually smaller than f1.4. So the large numbers are small apertures The small numbers are large apertures. So that's the most confusing part about it. But as long as you think of it in terms of the smaller holes, less light, bigger hole, more light gets in, that's basically how aperture works, okay? Okay, so here's something else that you might be able to control with your camera, your phone camera, especially if you have a pro mode on it, and that's called ISO. And the ISO, the higher the ISO is, the brighter the image, but there is a takeoff because you might see it look a little more pixelated, which means kind of grainy and not quite as smooth. ISO on, if you were buying film for a film camera, you might see something that says 400, Kodak Max 400 film or 800 film. That's corresponding to ISO, the 400 and the 800. Okay. So I mentioned exposure, and that aperture and shutter speed control exposure. Exposure is essentially the amount of light that actually reaches the camera sensor or the film. And many factors contribute to that, like the aperture and the shutter speed. And when you have a pro mode on your camera, on your phone, and you want to try it out, feel free to play around with it. Put it in pro mode, do different shutter speeds, do different apertures, and see what happens to your images. And like we said at the beginning of the workshop, we were talking about how there's lots of spring flowers right now. So if you want to go out with your phone, your camera phone, go take some pictures of spring flowers, get up real close, move further away, and take some pictures and play with those settings. Okay, so we won't cover white balance a whole lot today, but just know that white balance is something that photographers use to help make their images look the most true to life colors that they can. Okay, so since I mentioned getting close to little flowers or moving further away, I also want to talk briefly about depth of field. And depth of field is basically what looks sharp in an image and what looks like it's in focus. So the depth of field is controlled by the aperture, the focal length of your lens, and the physical distance to the object. So the closer and closer you get to a flower, for example, the more the rest of the stuff around the flower is going to be blurred. So a good example of that is this little flower here off on the left-hand side here, where just the one flower petals there are in extreme focus, and then everything else is kind of blurred behind it. The large zone of focus is called deep depth of field, and that will be over here with the mountain where it's a landscape and you want to be able to see everything perfectly in that landscape, and you're not blurring, the mountains behind or the sky or anything. Okay. And again, this picture right here was actually taken with a cell phone. And you can see they're focusing on the plant here. So the tree in the background here is blurred because they're focusing directly on this plant. Okay. So with smartphones, you can easily control, well, to a certain extent, you can easily control your physical distance from the subject, as long as you're not, on a cliff or whatever. So just be careful, be mindful of your surroundings when I say this. We don't want anyone to get too close to a statue and knock it over or anything like that. But if you're taking pictures of things like flowers, you can get down on the ground and get closer if you can. So, okay. And you can simulate shallow depth of field with a lot of cameras on your phones with a built-in selective focus. If you've tried this before, for me, I can tap with my Android phone, I can tap on what I want to be in focus, and then everything else will get a little bit more blur around it. And that's called built-in selective focus. Okay. Any questions about those kind of basics? You don't have to know a whole lot about them. Just know that these are the things that kind of control how your image looks as your final product. So if you blur the motion or freeze the motion, if you get closer to the subject and blur the background, or you get further away from the subject and have everything in focus, that all is going to matter. How bright or how dark it is, that's going to matter too. Okay. Questions so far? I promise we're about to get into the good stuff.
I don't see any questions, but I'll also throw out there that if you get more into photography, you'll hear these terms pretty often. So it's kind of a good foundational vocabulary.
Yes.
with photography. These are very common terms when it comes to photography.
Absolutely. And especially with fine art photography, the next section too is going to matter a lot about we're going to talk about composition. And that's more like composing your picture, you know, figuring out what is your subject and, you know, everything like that. But it is all basic foundational pieces to photography. So if you do, like Rebecca says, get very into photography, and you can do a decent job with your smartphones. That's why we wanted to run this class too. Okay.
Before you
Yes.
move on, also, I think that's what's so cool about photography is you can really get mechanical with it, and you can strike that balance between the mechanical side of photography and the artistic side and really come up with a really cool image that you've crafted on your own.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you know these, and if you know all these foundational things, you know, sort of the rules of photography, you can also then go out and break them and make really cool things without using, you know, using the opposite of these rules and things to consider too. And it's very fun. And we do have at the end some resources for anybody who's really interested in mobile photography in general, and some resources for general photography too that we can share with you. Okay, so we're going to move on to composition. And composition is something that, you know, famous artists throughout time, when they're doing paintings, sculptures, all that kind of stuff, they're going to pay attention to this too. So it's not just within photography, but it can be especially noticeable, I think, to me, I think, in photography. So some things you want to consider: your light source. So if you're outside taking a picture in bright sunlight and you look at the sun, well, you shouldn't look directly at the sun anyway, but if, so let me phrase that as, we don't want anybody to look directly at the sun. But if the sun is directly showing, you do want to be aware of where the sun is and what it's doing to the subject of your photograph. So for example, in this picture here, we can see that the sun is putting these really, it's really bright on this part of the lighthouse, and it's casting some shadows here. I don't know how well you guys can see this. I'm hoping you can see this okay with the lighthouse here, that there's some shadows being cast here. What you want to notice is basically the highlights and the shadows around your object. There are some specific times of day called the golden hours, which are just before sunrise and just before sunset, just after sunrise and just before sunset, which are great times to really observe light and how it plays with subjects for outdoor photos. So again, if you were going to take pictures of those spring flowers, you might get up just after sunrise and go out and take some pictures, and then come back out just before sunset, take some more pictures, and then compare the different lighting situations. Okay. The other thing to consider is lines. Natural lines or man-made lines in images will draw your eyes through that image. So if they're diagonal, vertical, or horizontal, or curving lines, all of those are going to lead your way through the picture. And there's usually one specific one, especially when you're doing landscape photography, and that's the horizon line. So here in our lighthouse image, there's a horizon line between the sky and the water here. And we're trying to make that as straight as possible to go along instead of curving, you know, because if you were to take a picture like this, and then it looks like the water is, you know, going at an angle. So that's your horizon line. And we'll talk a little bit more about horizon lines and some tricks to help you with that you can do with your phone camera. But just keep in mind that all those lines are going to lead you different places. So here's an image I took at the library just the other day. And you notice the first thing I notice when I'm looking at this picture is all of these lines, both in the carpet and the edges of the bookcases, and even in the lights that all send me down to this vanishing point over here, which means that's where you can no longer see the lines. And even the edges of the chairs kind of lead me in that direction. So that's a good way to look at lines. And then also we can see the sun coming in from all of these nice big windows over here and making the chairs very bright with the sun, and also the carpet here. Okay. Okay. So one of the other things to consider is orientation. And this is a very easy thing for you to do with your camera, because you can change your orientation of your camera by doing landscape or portrait, which basically just means vertical or horizontal for your image. And it really does and can change the mood of your image. So for example, this over here is the same subject done in portrait, or holding my camera like that, my phone camera like this vertically. And then here's horizontal, where it's called landscape. And it's, you can see, if you want more of your subject to be the bookshelves, or if you want more of your subject to be, up and down, or more, landscape, like you were taking a picture of, say, a mountain or something like that. Okay. And it can change the mood and the focus. Okay. A couple of other things to consider. Negative space. How do you want to frame your subject and background details or the absence of details? Again, this also brings up the idea of depth of field, but if you want to focus in specifically on a subject, you might think about putting that subject right in the middle and then have nothing else on either side of it in the background. For colors, those can change the mood of a photo, or you can add kind of a pop of color to add to send the person's eye into a certain direction, because our eyes are naturally drawn to bright colors. So for example, here's a nice example of negative space. So the subject of this image really is the people that are right here. And then you can just see the vast amount of snow around them, right? And over here, you've got this nice bright red and the green grass. Okay, so just some ideas about how to think about what you're taking a picture of. I joke that, I have a niece and nephew, and when they're running around, and because they're almost always in motion, and it's like with my regular camera, I always have it on this thing called sport mode, because sport mode freezes that action and takes part of that the shutter speed for me, where it goes at a very fast shutter speed, because of course they're moving very fast in general. So things to think about, like, okay. And now I think Rebecca's going to go ahead and take over and talk a little bit more about the mechanical side of things.
Okay, let me turn on my video also, so you can see my little face on the side there. Okay, so we're going to talk about first how to find the apps on your devices. Now we are working with, in person, we have a iPad. So I have an iPad and an Android tablet and an iPhone. So I'll show how to find each of those. But with iPhone and iPad, there's a camera app as well as a photo app. So your camera app is usually on your home screen, but you can access it from a lock screen as well, and I'll show you how to do that. And of course, that's the app that you use to take photos and videos. And then the Photos app, it's usually on the home screen as well, unless you've moved it, depending on your own, like the way you have your device set up. That's what's going to organize those photos and videos that you take with your camera app. And I'll show how to get into those, but let's also show how to do the Android. So if you want to switch to the next slide, Susan. So Android, pretty much the same. It's got a camera app as well, and that usually is going to be on your home screen unless you've moved it. It looks like a camera, of course, similar to the iPhone. Now, it might look a little different than the icons that I have on this slide, just because each device is slightly different for Android. iPhone is pretty much standardized. And then, of course, it has an app called Gallery, which is similar to the Photos app, and that's where all your photos and videos will go after you take them. Okay, so I can actually demonstrate how to get into those apps as well.
You want to do that now, or do you want to do the little tour thing first?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do the tour, and then I'll show how to do that once we switch over.
Okay.
So this little slide here is just showing there's multiple different ways on iPhone to get into the camera app. So the side on the left side is the lock screen. So that's the screen before you get your phone open and before you've put in like your Face ID or your PIN. You can actually access your camera right from there. I like that Apple has that, because you don't need to, do all that extra stuff. You can just press one button and jump right into your camera. And of course, you can access it from your home screen once you get it unlocked. And then you can also access it from something called the Control Center. And that's more of like a shortcut kind of menu where it has some utilities and apps that you may want to access more quick than your home screen. And again, I'll show how to get to each of those as well. And there should be another slide for Android as well, I think. Yes. So the screenshot we have on this slide is from our Android tablet, and you'll see in the bottom right corner, it has that little camera icon. For us, we just swipe that open, and then it will open the camera right from the lock screen. Again, so it's nice and easy. You don't have to put in any Face ID or PIN, you can just jump straight into your camera nice and quick. Okay. Any questions so far about how to get into those? Again, I'm going to demo those in a second after I go over some of the stuff that's on each of the cameras.
Here, let me go back to the question slide just for a second in case we have any questions.
And feel free to stop me at any time too. If you have a question, I'm happy to answer it.
Okay, doesn't look like we have any questions so far.
Okay, so we're going to do kind of a little tour of what it looks like when you have your camera app open before I do the demos, just so you kind of have a foundation of what I'm going to touch on. So this screenshot here is of the iPad. So let me grab the iPad. That's just our Apple tablet. So for iPad, when you jump into your camera app, there's a bunch of different tools on the right side. So you'll see up at the top, it starts with live, and we'll talk about what live photos are, but those are basically kind of little snippets that your iPad will take that's before and after you click on the shutter button. So it kind of gives a little bit of like a video. I don't know if you've ever seen Harry Potter, but they have the moving pictures in Harry Potter. It's kind of like that. And I'll show that as well. I'll give a little demonstration of that. And then the next tool down is HDR. HDR stands for high dynamic range. And with a lot of cameras nowadays, what happens is when you take a picture, they will combine a high exposure and a low exposure to get all of the really different details in one image so that nothing looks too blown out, nothing looks too dark. It balances the image really well. And you can decide whether you want that on or off. I think it takes a little more data to save a photo that's HDR, but a lot of people have it on automatically. A lot of phones, I know my iPhone does it automatically, but you usually can turn that off if you don't want it. There's also a timer, and that's very common, and I think it's on almost every camera, where you can decide you maybe want a 3-second timer, 10-second timer, it depends on your camera. But if you click on that, what happens is it will count down before the shutter button is automatically pressed. So that's good if you want to set up your camera and you want to maybe take a family photo. So you set your camera up, press that timer button, and then try to get into the picture so that you're not left out and you're the photographer. There's also flash, of course, and you can toggle that on and off. Some cameras will also have an automatic flash option so that it will actually detect the light in the area and turn the flash on. Now you can turn that on or off. It's depending on what you want. And that kind of gets into more of that like pro kind of mode where you can decide how you want it to look. Especially with flash, it's more noticeable than some of the other settings because depending on where you take the picture, your flash might reflect off something, for instance, glass. Your flash might illuminate something you may not have seen before. So that's something you can experiment with. There's also a reverse camera button right underneath the flash for iPad. And that is where it will reverse. Let me kind of show you actually. It will reverse, you got the camera on the iPad that's on the back of it, but you also get one that's on the front. So it's a selfie camera. Let me see. I think it's right in the middle for us. Apple sometimes will call it a selfie camera because most people take selfies with that reverse camera because it's facing towards you instead of facing the other way. And then on iPads and iPhones, that big white circle is your shutter button. So you press that to take a picture. It will also work as a video button. If you're in video mode, you can press that button to record video. And then right underneath shutter button is your photos library. So you can click that and that will bring you out to your photos that you've already taken. It's just a quick way to get right into that photos library app. And then the last thing on the bottom is where you can switch between the different photo modes. So you can switch between photos, videos, panoramic, portrait mode, depending on if you're on an iPhone. There's a couple of other different modes too, and I recommend kind of experimenting with what you have on your device. And then on the left side, you'll see a slider bar that's got a plus and a minus on it, and that's your digital zoom. So that will let you zoom in and out as if you were doing it on a regular camera. but it's called digital zoom because it's not actually physically moving the lens in your camera. It's just digitally zooming in and out, if that makes sense. And then yours might look a little different depending on your orientation for iPad. So our orientation is like this when we took a picture, but if you have it as portrait mode, your icons might be in a different spot. But those are all the little symbols. They should be pretty much the same on your iOS device.
My apologies about switching that too fast.
That's okay. Now, iPhone looks a little bit different than iPad because the screen is not as big, so it's not going to be able to put all of those icons on one screen and make it look easy to use. So what iPhone has done is moved some of the tools into another menu. For instance, the timer tools are in there and some other tools. We'll get more into what's on the other menu. But once you jump into your iPhone, you'll see kind of some of the similar stuff. You'll see your shutter button down in the bottom middle there. Your photos library is right near the shutter button. You have your reverse camera button for your selfies. You'll also see those photo modes are right above the shutter. So you can flip through those if you want to say do like a panorama or take a video. And then up at the top above your viewfinder, you'll see some options for flash. And my iPhone has something called night mode. And night mode is where the iPhone will actually detect the light that's around it and expose the picture for longer so that it lets in more light and you get more details, better color. It depends on your model too. So some iPhones that are older might not have night mode. I have an iPhone 11. I think iPhone 11s may be the first ones to start night mode. I'm not exactly sure. And then you have the live photos option up in the top right corner. And you can toggle that on or off because live photos do take more memory than a regular photo because it saves a little video of before and after you press the shutter button. And again, it might vary depending on your model, especially if you have an older iPhone. Okay, go ahead, Susan, sorry.
Sorry.
And the Android tablet is pretty similar. It's got all the the camera options up at the top. So you'll see there's a little button that has a timer. You can also change something called the aspect ratio, and we'll talk more about what that is, but that you can change the size of the image, whether you want that as a widescreen photo or you want it to be a square photo. I'll show how to do that as well. You can also switch your photo modes down at the bottom there. You'll see we're on photo mode, but you can also switch to pro mode. You can do video. You can take food photography on Android tablet. So it's kind of set up so that you can get really close to the photo and it's kind of like macro photography. And then you have on your right side the reverse camera button. It's kind of similar to the iPhone in that it has that same kind of icon. It's kind of looks like the recycling symbol almost, where it's got two arrows pointing. And then again, it's the same shutter button, looks very similar. And then it has that same gallery photos. They call it gallery instead of photos with Android. So then again, that would jump you out to all the photos you had previously taken. I know that was a lot to digest, but we still have one more. For Android phone, it's very similar. It's going to have your camera mode options up at the top. Again, depending on your model, it might look different. I think this was on Susan's phone, and I think you have a Samsung?
Yeah, it's a Galaxy 10.
Okay, Galaxy 10. I'm an iPhone person, so
Yes.
So I know mine. And then, of course, you have the shutter button down at the bottom. It's that white circle, and you have the option to record video. I don't know what is that one on the right side, the thumbnails?
Yeah, that's the gallery, basically getting you into the gallery. It's
Gotcha.
The gallery. Yep.
It looked similar to the shutter.
Yeah.
And then you have your reverse camera button, and then you can jump into your settings, and then some of your other stuff like your flash and your effects as in like filters, I think.
Yeah, like yep, like making it lighter, darker, doing cool things.
Yes. So some of the more like pro mode stuff that you can get onto. Okay. Any questions so far? I know that was a lot, but once we get into the demo part, I think it will make a little more sense.
Yeah, she'll be going over everything in more details.
I just wanted to throw that all out there before I started pressing buttons.
Yes. Okay, no questions so far. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my image here, and then I'm going
to switch my video. Okay, so I've got a camera that is positioned to show the iPad as it's going to take a picture of our little stuffed animal. It's Totoro. He's one of my favorite little cartoon guys. If you've ever seen My Neighbor Totoro, it's a Japanese animated movie. Anyways, let me go ahead and make sure I'm not missing anything. Let me get my, there we go. I've got my PowerPoint back up in the background just to make sure I'm covering everything. Okay, so let's go over those icons again. So up at the top, you'll see my live photos, and I have a slash through it right now. That means it's currently not on, but if I wanted to, I could turn that on. And now I've got it said live up in the middle, and then now it's yellow here, so that's on. So that means when I do the shutter, when I click on the shutter, it's gonna take a video before and after. So say I was taking a picture of my cat and he was moving around. If I go back to that live photo and I click on it, it should show me a little tiny clip of the video that I took.
Rebecca, do we want at this point in time to say if anybody would like to, as we're live demoing, if you want to get your phone out and find something on your desk or wherever you're watching the Zoom webinar from, and attempt to do some of this yourself, you're more than welcome to do that while you're watching the webinar.
Yes.
We're trying to make this one a little bit more interactive. So maybe you have either a stuffed animal like Totoro or a vase of flowers like we have behind Totoro here, or even something like a pencil case or whatever you might have around you that you'd like to possibly take some photos of to get some practice with the different modes. You're more than welcome to do that right now. I do recommend if you're watching on your phone or tablet, go ahead and continue watching, and then you could do the YouTube video later and try to do it at the same time. But if you have two devices, if you're watching on a laptop and you have a phone, feel free to take your phone out and try to practice a little bit.
Yes, this is the first time we've held this as a webinar. Usually in person, everybody kind of pulls out their camera and we have a whole bunch of stuffed animals and little subjects that they can photograph.
Yes, we have willing models that do not move a whole lot in person.
Yes, this is our model for today.
Yes, but okay, please continue, Rebecca.
Okay, sounds good. So you'll also see the HDR, so I can click on that and I can decide whether I want it on automatically or if I want to turn it on permanently or turn it off. I can also tap on my timer and that will let me change between it being off 3 seconds or 10 seconds. Let's do a 3-second one and I can kind of show you. Once I tap that shutter button, it's going to count down and then it's going to take the photo for me. And then you'll notice down here under the shutter button, that's my little thumbnail of that image that has gone to my gallery. And then let me change that so it's not on the timer anymore. I also have the ability to change my flash, so I can click on that. And right now it's currently off, but I can turn it on auto or I can keep it on. And if you want it on, that means no matter what you do, it's going to take with a flash. So keep that in mind if you turn it on. Rebecca, it's not just going to be one and done.
Do you want to go ahead and show an example of what happens with flash on the vase?
Oh, yes.
So that people can tell. So when Rebecca was mentioning earlier about, using flash and choosing when or when to not use flash and saying, your camera will tell you, yes, I think you should use flash in this scenario. But if you're trying to take a picture of a fish in an aquarium and you have that glass in front of you, just know that that flash bulb is like a concentrated bit of light energy. So what's going to happen is you're going to end up with the basically like the flash bulb spot on your picture. So you can see a remarkable a marked difference between without the flash and with the flash. So I recommend when you're practicing, take some pictures of stuff that has a reflective surface so that you can see how much that flash makes the difference. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for reminding me. So I've got it off now, but that's kind of the difference between the flash. It's going to give you a more especially if something's close up, it's going to give a lot of reflection depending on the like quality of the object versus no flash. So that's good practice to see in real time what your kind of flash mode is. And then of course I have my reverse camera button. If I click on that, it's going to switch my camera from the back of the iPad to the camera that I have on the front of the iPad. So if I click that, now it's taking a picture of me behind the Elmo. So it's got the little camera up here at the front of my iPad that it's using instead of the one that's on the back. So a lot of people use that for selfies. They'll do it for group pictures if they want to, you know, hold out their camera and make sure that they're in it as well. It's very often used for me. And then of course you have your shutter button there, and that will change if you're in your video mode. So if I go down here to my mode and I click on video instead of photo, now it's switched over to being red. So kind of universally, that red dot is a record button for video. So if I were to click on that, it's going to start up here. It's counting down. Actually, it's counting up. So that's how long my recording is. And then I can click stop here if I want to stop recording, and that would go into my photos library. And then, like I said before, you can kind of switch through the different modes here. So I have time lapse, I have slow-mo, so that'll do a slow-mo video. I have my video mode, I have my photo mode, I have my square, so that would take a square image instead of a 4:3 image, which is the default. I have a panorama option, and that's for like if you wanted to take a picture of a cityscape, maybe you wanted to get the whole skyline of a city, or you wanted to get an entire mountain range, or just capture something that was bigger than a regular photo, you can use the panorama mode. And in the handout that you'll get a more kind of step-by-step guide on how to use some of these modes. So even though I'm not kind of doing a deep dive on each mode, you'll get more of that with the handouts as well. And then on the left side here, you'll see my slider bar for my digital zoom. So I can slide in and out for zooming in and out. The cool thing with iPhone and iPad too is I can actually physically zoom in and out with my fingers. So I can zoom like that or out like that, or with two hands. So that's kind of cool. You don't have to use that slider bar on the side. Any questions so far about any tools on iPad? I'll show the iPhone next, and then we'll jump into Android.
No questions so far, but I'll be sure to interrupt you if there are any. Or
okay, cool. No problem. Let me put Totoro back.
And feel free to let us know if you want us to want Rebecca to demo something a second time too. We're happy to do that as well.
Yes. So I have my iPhone here. Actually, I didn't do a demo of how to get into the apps as well. Let me show that on iPad. So on iPad, this is my main home screen. For us, we have our our camera app down in the dock here, but yours could be anywhere on a home screen here or on another screen, depending on how yours is set up. And then I have my Photos app down here. I think it's living there normally, but here I think it's just showing because it's in the recent apps that we've opened. So that's that kind of rainbow flower that says Photos right underneath it. And of course, you just tap the app to open it and it will open the camera. You can also open it from the lock screen. So if I have my iPad closed and I've opened it, I should be able to get into it. Okay, so with iPad, it's down at the bottom. Let me see if I can show you. It's very, very small, but right here, if I were to swipe, it would open my camera from the lock screen. So let me show that again. I'm on my lock screen and I swipe. Come on, there we go. And now I've got my camera open. I can also do it from something called the Control Center. We talked about that. That's with that quick access menu that Apple has. If you swipe down from the top right corner near your battery icon, you're going to get your, oh, come on. It's not going to do it, of course. Actually, there we go. Yeah. That's my quick access menu called the Control Center. and I've got my little camera icon here, and I can jump into it from there as well. Let me show it on iPhone too. So with iPhone, this is my iPhone 11, and right here on the bottom corner, I see my little camera icon. Can you see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
I
Yes,
can
we can.
darken that as well. So for me, I would tap and hold that and let go, and it's got my camera open. And we'll talk more about the tools here. Let me go back. If I open up my phone, I can access it as well. For me, my camera lives up in the top right corner, but again, yours could be anywhere on your phone depending on where you put it. So I just tap it and it opens. And then of course I can do it from the control center. Let me focus this a little bit. Is that too bright? Can you see that okay?
Can you take it down maybe one notch?
Let's see. Come on. It's like orienting itself. Oh, no, it doesn't want to do it.
Yeah, it's a little bright. I think it's focusing on what's in the background. So you might have to take it out a little bit and then try to.
Why is it not?
I think it's focusing on Totoro.
I think it is too. I'm trying to figure out how to lower the light. There we go.
There we go. That's better. Yeah.
Way better.
Much
okay,
better.
Cool. Mm-hmm. So for us, I can get into the control center from my iPhone by swiping down, and that's my control center, and I can get into my camera there. Now my control center might look a little different than yours because you can set it up differently through your settings. And if you have more questions about how to do that, I can answer that at the end of the webinar too. I do that for our iPhone and iPad class. Okay, so let's jump into the camera since we've got that for my iPhone. So of course, the main screen there, that's my viewfinder. And then I have let me brighten it up just a little bit. I have my different photo modes here that I can slide through. So I can switch to portrait mode, panorama. Now the cool thing about portrait mode, it will actually give like a sense of a depth of field because you can blur the background. So say I was taking a picture of Totoro and I wanted to blur the background, I can do that with portrait mode. It's not as easy to tell what that looks like right now because, I don't know, it's just this subject is not the same as if you were like outside or...
We basically put cardboard behind him, so...
Yes, we put cardboard behind him.
So blurring the cardboard isn't as interesting as blurring, say, like blades of grass or something.
Right, or like if there was a big cityscape in the background or something.
Yeah.
So I would experiment with portrait mode if you have an iPhone that has that on it, because it's really fun to use, and you can switch through even different modes. And then of course I have my regular photo mode, I have video, I have slow-mo, time-lapse. Let me get back to photo. And then up at the top, I have my flash. So currently it's slashed, so that means it's off. And then I have my live photos. And then this little arrow here in the top middle, that's gonna actually open up some more tools. So if I tap on that, down here, you'll notice I have some more tools. Like for instance, I have my timer. I have the ability to change it from a 4x3 to maybe I wanna change it to a square instead. So it's gonna crop it to a square. Or I can turn my flash off from this way or change my live photo option. And I also have the option to change my exposure. So if I wanted to mess around with some of my exposure settings, so like with aperture or f-stops, I can change that from here. So that's kind of getting into some more of the nitty-gritty of the technical side. And then I have my filters that I can add to my photos. So maybe I wanted to make my photo black and white. I could do that from here.
Okay, can you show us aspect ratio again?
Yeah, let me get back to it.
Thank you. And we'll show how to do the aspect ratio on the Android devices as well in just a moment.
Yes. So if I'm on my iPhone and I just have it open, let me bring it a little closer. Up at the top, you'll see that little arrow pointing up. That's my menu, which is gonna pop up more tools. So once I click that, I'll notice down here, I have some more tools. Right now I have it on 1:1. Here, let me get my pen.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and put it in the chat how it looks.
I have it in the handout too.
Mm-hmm.
If I click on that, I can switch it between square, 4:3, or 16:9. 16:9 is like a widescreen, or it doesn't show very well because I've got it in portrait mode, but it's more of a widescreen kind of photo.
It's more like when you watch a movie in a movie theater and it's letterbox, and then you go and you have to watch it on your TV at home, and you end up with the lines above, because it's done for length as opposed to the like portrait style.
Yes. So again, it's just you're clicking on where it says 4:3 or square or 16:9.
And Square was really popular on things like Instagram and social media channels. I don't know if it's still quite as popular, but they initially had their images were all square. So
yes. And then I have my shutter button, my reverse camera button, so that if I wanted to do a selfie, I could just click that button and it would switch over. You can see me there in the background. Let me switch it back. And then I have where I can jump into my photo library if I click on that little thumbnail there. I took a picture of the library this morning, so that's what's showing up there. Let me go back to my main menu. And of course, if I'm on video, it's going to switch to that red instead of white for my shutter because it's on video. Any questions about iPhone? I can always demo something again too. Mm-hmm. Let me show you what it looks like if you have a live photo. So let me find one on my phone. And that way you can see what I mean by a live photo, because I feel like it's hard to explain without seeing what it is. Let me see if I can find one. Okay, perfect. So I got some sunflowers a while ago and my cat was sniffing them. With a live photo, again, it captures a little bit of video before and after you click that shutter. And once you go and look at the photo again in your photo library, it will say live up in the top left corner. And if I tap and hold on the photo, it will show me that little clip. So you see there where it's got the little movements of me taking the picture. So it's a really kind of cute little feature that iPhone, and I think iPad also has it too, depending on what your model is. And it's really kind of fun to go back and look at photos you've done, because it gives kind of like a little slice of life version of your image. And I really enjoy going back and looking at pictures. I hope that kind of gave you a good demonstration of what live photos are.
Hey, Rebecca, off the top of your head, do you happen to know if iPhone 5S can do the aspect ratios?
I believe so, yes. It might look a little different. I can send that information. Let me write that down.
Yeah, I can look it up here too.
iPhone 5S. It might look a little different because the way the camera's laid out on older iPhones, depending on what your like software.
Yeah, and some of the older iOS. Okay.
Okay, let me go ahead and switch to Android unless anybody has a question or wants me to demonstrate something again on either iPhone or iPad.
Okay. Would anyone like to see anything demoed a second time for iPad? We can always come back to it later too.
Yes, I have no qualms about doing that whatsoever. Okay, let me go ahead and get this open so I can show you how to access your camera. So this is our Android lock screen, and you'll notice in the bottom right corner, we have that photo little camera icon. So if I tap and drag that, whoop, now it's opened. It's not gonna have the best, let me switch it so we can see Totoro there.
There you go.
There we go. So that would just open it straight from the lock screen without me having to get into a home screen or having to enter any sort of PIN or Face ID or anything. Let me show that again. Let me get this locked. There we go. So I just tap and drag it on this model. This is a Samsung. I'm not sure what it is.
I think it's a Galaxy 9 or 10 tablet.
I'm not 100% sure. It doesn't say on the back because we have some stickers. I think it may be covering it, but yes, it's a Samsung tablet, Android tablet. Okay, let me also show how to get onto it if you're on your home screen. Let me just unlock this real quick. Oops. I have to get used to switching between Android and iPhone. Come on. There we go. Okay, can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, so for us, we have our camera icon there. That's our camera app. And we also have our gallery app where we can jump into what we've taken, either photos or videos. And then again, it might look a little different on yours depending on your phone model. So this one looks a little different than the slides that I had earlier. And yours might even look different than that depending on what kind of phone you have.
For example, my camera app is blue. It still says camera, but it says it's blue with a little camera in it rather than red.
Gotcha. But for the most part, if you're looking for a camera app, it's going to have that kind of camera looking icon on it. I think that's pretty universal now with most devices.
Yes.
Okay, so let's just go ahead and we're going to tap it to open it. Oops, I think I tapped it for too long. There we go. Now I've got it and it's showing Totoro there in our little vase. So then again, it's kind of similar to that slide that I was showing. So you have your different photo modes down here at the bottom. So I can switch through. I have panorama, hyperlapse, which I think is similar to time lapse on iPhone and iPad. And then we have this pro mode. Let me jump into pro mode to kind of show you what different stuff we have. This is slightly different than iPhone even because I feel like there's some more stuff even that you can do than iPhone.
Yeah. And this is what I was talking about at the beginning about some phones and tablets having a pro mode where you can actually control some of those things like exposure, aperture, shutter speed, ISO. So if you notice up there, it says ISO 200. It's got the white balance and then it's got I think
that's the
exposure. So you can mess around with those too.
Yeah, so if I were to click on the ISO, I can toggle it between the different numbers. So ISO usually comes 100, 200, 400, 800 or above. Usually 200 and 400 are kind of the most common numbers. And if you want to get like some low light photography, you can go down to a different number. I think if you do 800, that's better for low light. And then if you go to 100, that's better for something that's brighter. So that's just something to experiment with. And you can make it manual or automatic right up here on ours. And then we can also switch white balance. So white balance helps a lot, especially if you're inside and you have fluorescent lights, or if you're outside and you want to make sure you're capturing stuff true to light. So it changes depending on what you click, or it will automatically detect it if you have it on auto. And then if we do exposure, we can change the exposure as well. And I don't think there's any more settings for Pro.
Not on that one.
There are some other cool settings like food photography, virtual shot. So I think that you can get more of like a 3D image. Is that right?
Yes.
And then HDR, of course. So that again is taking the very bright side of the image and the dark side of the image and combining it so that you're getting the like most balanced value. And then continuous shot. I think that is where if you're taking something, like say you're taking pictures of something that's happening very fast, if you do continuous shot, it will take a lot of pictures very quickly.
Like
so that
if you
you're
were
capturing something fast.
If you were taking pictures of a bird that's flying, right? And you want to capture all the different points of the wing flapping, continuous shot would allow you to do that.
Yes. iPhone also has that too. It's not a specific mode, but I think if you hold down the shutter button, it will do a continuous shot.
Yeah. Isn't it burst? Is that what it's called?
Yes, I think it is called burst actually. And then sports, I think that just ups the shutter speed so that you can capture some of the action. And then animated, is it GIF or GIF? I can never decide which, but
I say GIF. I say GIF.
I say GIF as well.
Because then people aren't confusing it with the brand of peanut butter, but
animated GIF is kind of like a little, it's similar to a live photo. It's kind of like a little snippet of video that will kind of repeat continuously in a loop. they're very common online. If you've seen anything online where maybe you're on Facebook and you see a video that's looped, like a short little clip, that's usually an animated GIF. And then of course we have on the right side, we have our reverse camera button. Let me switch back to photo mode. Photo. So we have our reverse camera button, we have our shutter, and then we have our thumbnails, which will jump us out to our gallery app. And then up at the top, we have some tools up here as well. Let me move the vase so you can see it better. So we can jump right into our camera settings from here, which is different than iPhone because you can't do that on iPhone. You can turn on your flash or turn it off. And we have a timer button here. Right now it says off, but if I wanted to toggle it, I can change it to 2 seconds, 5 seconds, or 10 seconds. I have my aspect ratio here. So right now it's on 4:3, but you can also do 16:9 and 1:1, which is the square. And then this is, I think, some effects, so like filters that you can do. So for instance, maybe we wanted to do a black and white photo, we can do that from there. Let me go back to the original. And then I believe to zoom, you just kind of pinch.
Yep.
It doesn't have that slider bar unless you start pinching, and then you can kind of slide it from there. And then these little icons here, I think they switch between, okay, yep, it switches between like a farther away, say if you're taking a landscape and you wanted a farther image, or if you were closer to something and you wanted to take more of an intimate photo, you could switch it to that.
Yeah, it's kind of like a jump zoom is what I think of it as.
Yes.
Because it's like it's jumping up by what, 2? I think it's
yes, it says
2x, 1x and 2x.
Times 2, and then it goes back to normal. Okay. Any questions so far? I'm happy to demonstrate something again too.
No question. Doesn't look like we have any questions so far.
Okay.
Other than the 5S, which we'll talk about at the end.
Yes. Let me get back down here on my PowerPoint, make sure I'm not forgetting anything.
Yeah. Do you want to show grid lines?
I was just going to say that.
Okay.
Yes. So you may have noticed that on this iPad, and I believe I have it on my iPhone. I don't think it's on the iPad though. Yes,
I think it is.
It is on the iPad. On the iPad as well, you'll notice these lines that are appearing on my viewfinder. We refer to those as grid lines. So grid lines can be really useful, especially when you're taking pictures outside or you want to frame something up so it's kind of symmetrical, or like you want it to have straight horizon lines like we talked about earlier. By turning on grid lines, it can kind of help you to make sure everything is straight or in part of the frame that you want it to be. Like for instance, Totoro here is on the right third of the photo. So it might be more, maybe I want him more in the middle. It might help me if I were to kind of put him right in the middle there, then that's helping me kind of make it more symmetrical. There's a lot of different things you can do with grid lines to help you compose your image. Especially when you think about the rule of 2/3. Oh, not 2/3, just the rule of thirds. So for photography, a lot of people consider the rule of thirds when doing, when composing their image. Let me show on iPhone, so you'll see those lines here. So for instance, maybe you want to make sure that your photos have like your stuff in the top third or in the bottom third of your shot. Your grid lines are kind of useful for that. I use it a lot for framing stuff and making sure stuff is straight.
Same. Definitely for making sure I'm straight, especially if I'm holding my phone to take a picture of something.
Yes.
You know, your arms are not super stable when you're taking a picture. So it's good to be able to kind of get that horizon line and know that I've got everything squared up.
I can show you how to turn these on as well, because they are usually not automatically on when you get your phone or your tablet.
Yeah, will you go ahead and demonstrate how to turn them off and then go ahead and turn it back on?
Yeah. So let me get into my settings. On iPhone and iPad, you're going to want to go into your settings. So let me do it on iPad just because that's bigger.
Yeah, and it's not your apps. It's not the photo app setting. It's actually your device settings. So you're going to go into the one that looks like a gear on the device itself.
So let me demonstrate how to jump into that. So I'm on iPad right now. And if I click on my settings app, that looks like a gear and it's got the word settings underneath. I click on settings and then I'm going to scroll down until I see my camera settings. Did I miss it?
I don't think so. I don't see it yet.
Let's see, camera. Here we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Camera's right there if I click on it. Then I have a couple options here, including grid. So right now I have it toggled on, and that means I have my grid lines on, but I can toggle it off by just clicking that button there. And now if I go back to my camera, now I don't see any grid lines. Let me go back and do it again. Toggle it on. And now I've got my grid lines back. And that's the same for iPhone. You just go into your settings and then get to camera settings and then turn on your grid. Let me show it for Android because it's a little different. In Android, you can jump right into your settings from your camera.
So Rebecca, before you do that, we do have a couple questions about one of the other settings that you can see from the iPad camera settings, and it's the mirror photos.
Yes. This one here?
Yes.
So that, I believe, if you're taking a picture with your front camera, it will make it as if it's a mirror image instead of, like, I think some will automatically do it so that like words and stuff aren't reversed.
Right.
So let's practice it. Let me see if I turn it on. Maybe I'll take a selfie.
And then go ahead and take a selfie. Do you have anything with words?
Yeah, my name tag is on.
Okay, perfect.
Let me take my name tag. And then I'll do one with it off.
So if you've ever noticed on social media posts where someone has posted a selfie of them and they've got a shirt that has writing on it, but it's backwards, that's usually what's happened, is that it hasn't mirrored and it's taking the selfie picture without flipping it.
Okay, so here's me. I just took a random photo of myself.
The knitting book behind you too is also a good example there too.
Make it brighter a little bit. So you'll see my name tag there. On this one, it's got my name reversed, but I took another one and now it's not reversed. And that's where I turned it off. So this was mirror on and mirror off. So it does reverse and you'll see knitting in the back. So that's helpful if you don't want stuff to be reversed when you're doing selfies. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, cool. And I just recommend, if you're not sure what something is on your camera, just to test it out, do a couple test images, just walk around your neighborhood and just kind of go through your settings and go through your camera tools and just see what it does. I do that a lot if I'm not sure what a particular setting is.
Same. Yep. And we encourage you to, with the camera app, push buttons. There's not a lot you can do. I would recommend taking pictures of things that are interesting but are not super important to you, so that's why we suggest, maybe flowers or other cool things in your house or whatever you want when you're practicing. And that's the best way to learn what each of the buttons does and what each of the icons will do once you've touched it. So
I definitely did a lot of that during when we were closed, like last summer and spring. We would just walk around the neighborhood and I would practice using my portrait mode for different flowers, like for instance, like that. That's one of my flower pictures I took. It's not like the best lighted picture right now because we're inside, but I used portrait mode because it made the image in the background really dark, or not dark, blurred. And then the flowers were in sharp focus.
Right. So that's, again, your depth of field.
Yes. So it was really fun to play around with that kind of stuff, especially during the spring when you have all these opportunities to go walking and being outside. Okay, let me focus this.
Focus just a little bit. Yep. You might drop it down just a little for your...
Does that look better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, let me show how to get into the settings from your camera app on Android. So I've opened my app. Let me click on it. And up in the top right corner, let me move Totoro a little bit. Oh, I'm sorry, top left, I see my little gear icon for my settings. And I'm going to click on that. And it's opened my camera settings. So I can scroll down and then I'll see here grid lines. If I tap on that, then I have a couple options. I can switch between having 3x3 grid lines, square grid lines, or I can just turn them off. So let me switch to square and see what that looks like. I am curious because I don't think I've seen that before. Okay, so it looks like it's 2 lines on the left and right that are actually making that middle part square. So that might be helpful if you wanted to take a picture and maybe later you want to crop it into a square, but you want to keep the original so that you don't lose that image later. The thing with aspect ratio too is you want to keep in mind that once you take it in a square, you can't get that other part of the image back, if that makes any sense. So you can always crop it if you take it as a full like 4x3 image, but if you take it as a square, you can't get that other information back. Same for if you're taking it as a black and white image. You can always make a color image and change it black and white, and that way you'll still have the color. But if you take it as a black and white image, you're never going to get that as a color because you didn't have that information to begin with, if that makes sense. So I like to keep that in mind, especially when I want to do cropping, because I can't get the image back because it was, you know, if it's a square, I can't make it have more image than it was taken with.
Right, not without having a really complex photo editing software like Photoshop, and even then it doesn't look the best when you do that necessarily.
Yes.
So it's better to take an image from further away and get more information and crop in.
Yes. I mean, it's always good to experiment too, you know, see what works and see what doesn't. There's no right or wrong way. It's just how you like to use your tools.
Yes. And we'll actually show you when we do the editing in just a moment that your camera, your app that's native to your device does have some editing capabilities, including crop.
Yes. So for us on Android, up at the top here, again, we can do the editing as, oh, actually, let me go into the picture. Yeah. So we have a picture on here. Oh, look, it's Susan's puffin. So here I just jumped into our gallery from the Photos app. I just clicked on the thumbnail image and it pulled up the gallery. So now this is the last image that I took on this. I think actually, Susan, you took this one maybe. Yeah. So this is an image that we took previously and we can actually edit this. So I think if we go in the top right corner, no. Oh, okay, I see it. So with Android, if you click on the little pencil here in the bottom left, for us, it might be different on yours. If I click on that pencil, it's going to give us some options to edit it. So on the right side, I can edit the exposure. I can add some stuff like I can paint on it or draw on it. I can add text. I can add stickers. Those are pretty popular, or shapes, usually with social media. I can add a filter. So maybe I wanted to switch it to black and white. That's a popular one. And I can also crop it. So maybe I wanted to take my square image and make it a little closer in on my puffin guy. Then I could crop it and then hit save up there. Now I'm not going to jump too far into the photo editing stuff just because it's more about taking photos today, and we do have other photo editing classes as well.
Yes, and again, we recommend playing with it. Go ahead and go in there and see what each icon does. You know, take a picture of something and then try to edit it and do something fun with it.
Yes, just take a picture and do a little test and see what everything does. That will give you more familiarity when you do stuff that you really like in the future. And then of course I can change my cropping. So I recommend kind of playing around with these. And what is that? Okay, that's changing the way it's slanted.
So again, if your grid lines aren't there in the beginning and you want to straighten it out, you can do that, or you can change the angle so that your horizon.
That might help you get more.
Yeah, your lines.
Like I want to make my line here straight.
Yeah, and remember when we talked about lines in the beginning about composition. So lines are kind of important for where you're going to lead the people in your image. So.
And let me show how to do stuff like this on iPad.
Great.
So I've got my, let me pull up. Let me zoom in a little bit. Oop. Okay. So let me get into my Photos app, and maybe I want to edit a photo of Totoro and this little vase here. So if I tap on the image, I get some options. Up here in the right-hand corner, I have an edit option, and that's going to jump me out to where I can edit. So on the left side here, I have options. I can change some of the exposure. Let me see. What happens if I click on that? What is that doing? Oh, okay. I see. When I click on each of these, then on the
You
right,
get,
here,
you get
I
the
get
options
different
on the right.
tools.
Yes.
I don't do this very often, you can tell. Yeah, so if I click on this, then I have some options to go in here and change some of my brightness, my contrast, shadows, highlights. You can really get into some nitty-gritty stuff here. Tint, I can put some sharpness, tints, vibrance, warmth. I mess around with warmth sometime because that really changes the mood of the photo, at least for me.
Yeah.
And then I can do my filters. So maybe I want to do black and white, popular. I have my option to crop and straighten. So maybe I wanted to slant it and make it really, that's cute.
That's a fun one.
That's like my
fun Totoro
profile photo for Totoro.
For social media there.
Yes.
Perhaps.
So yeah, you can have a lot of fun doing different stuff. And then up here, of course, I can crop it. I can do down here, square, 16 by 9, 10 by 8. So there's a bunch of different options even after you take the photo to kind of crop stuff.
Looks very, and it looks very, black and white tends to look artistic and
yes,
some fun cropping angles. I also tend to think 16 by 9 is more like what you see in a movie theater with the for the aspect ratio. So perhaps if you're doing like a sweeping landscape vista or something like that, or even something up close like this can look really cool with 16 by 9.
And so there's just so many buttons too. I recommend kind of doing this where you click, okay, what does that do?
Yeah.
Okay, it rotates it. So I would.
And you can unleash your creativity, and then it just makes sure that, you know, you can go back a step too. If you don't like something you've just done, you can go back a step.
You can hit cancel.
And hit cancel. If you like what you've done, you hit done and you can save it. And it doesn't save over the original image. It gives you a new one.
Yes, that's right. And that's what's cool. I took some photography classes, and one of the main things the teacher would emphasize is try to get what you want in the photo in camera before you go in to edit it. Because again, editing, you can always take stuff away or add stuff, but to get that original image almost close to what you really want is important, because then you don't have to do a lot of work afterwards.
Absolutely.
But sometimes it's fun to do a lot of work and play around. On iPhone and iPad, if you click on the little 3 dots, it's going to give you another menu here where if you click on markup, then I can go in and do some drawing. So I have some drawing tools. Maybe I wanted to give Totoro like a little rosy cheeks. Let me click on some rosy cheeks here. And maybe I want to draw something on Totoro. So you can do a lot of fun, different stuff, and I can undo if I wanted to undo.
And again, this is all within that app that already exists on your device.
Yes.
There's quite a bit you can do with the existing app.
There's really so much you can do.
Yep. So what Rebecca just did was she clicked on the 3 little dots up in the top right corner next to done, and then hit markup, and markup will let you do drawing on the picture.
Yes. And I can put information about that in the email that we send out as well.
Yeah.
Let me write that down.
Yep. Okay.
And that's pretty much the same on iPhone too. I don't need to jump into iPhone because it's almost exactly the same, unless somebody wants to see it.
Do you want to go ahead and show some of our accessories?
Oh, yeah. Let me switch over to my computer camera. So some accessories you can get. selfie stick. So I have a selfie stick, but this is the library's selfie stick because we had them for one of our Google Expeditions thing. But basically a selfie stick, I can put my camera or my cell phone. Let me see if it will fit on here. There we go. So I put my cell phone on this, and it's basically going to let me get further away from my camera. So this stretches out so that I could do a selfie, which is further away. So this helps if you have like a group of people, maybe they're back here, or you're in a space where there's not someone else with you and you want to get a picture of what's behind you, of your environment. There's really a bunch of different stuff you can do with selfie sticks. And the cool thing is it's got a shutter button on the handle. So I don't actually have to reach up to my phone to take the picture. I just press this and it's enabled with Bluetooth so that it will just actually press the shutter for me on the handle here. So I recommend getting a selfie stick if you're traveling, but keep in mind that some places will not allow selfie sticks. Like I think Disneyland and Disney World don't allow selfie sticks.
And most museums.
Yep, museums won't.
Because again, they don't want folks backing into statues or paintings or anything like that.
And also it's useful to find out what photography policies places have. They usually have it listed on their website. Like they'll tell you if they allow flash photography or if they allow selfie sticks or certain accessories, or I recommend if you go anywhere like that to check that out. And then we also have, let me show you, this cool little set that will let you put different lenses on your already existing lens. So I have a little clip, this is Susan's, but I have this clip here so I can show you what it looks like. This is a little lens that I can clip onto my iPhone. So let me screw it on here and show you what it looks like.
And the newer iPhones actually have cameras already that have some of these ideas, like a fisheye lens.
Like mine has two.
Yeah, and some more pro mode lenses. But you can also buy these little accessory kits. I mean, they range in price too. So you can get some expensive ones and some not expensive ones. That's totally up to you, of course.
So I can just clip this right to my phone. And then this is a fisheye lens. So I've got that on there. Let me show you what it looks like. Let me put it on my let me switch my video so you can see what it looks like. And this is really cool because then you don't have to go out and like buy a really expensive fisheye lens. You can just get one for your phone.
Mm-hmm. And again, there are a lot, if you were to do this with a DSLR or a point and shoot camera and get all these accessories and stuff, they're heavier, right? So with your phone, it doesn't take up a lot of space. If it serves the purpose and it doesn't take up a lot of space, then you can just get these and just chuck them into your purse or whatever carry-on luggage you've got, and use them. So that one's my favorite. The fisheye one is
the
really
fisheye
fun.
Is so cool. I mean, I'm not demonstrating the coolest things you can do with a fisheye lens, but I love a fisheye lens.
Yeah.
Let me also show you. Let me switch my video. And this one has a bunch of different lenses you can attach to this little clip. It's not just the fisheye one. Let me cover this back up. And then there's also some tripods you can get. Where did that one go? Here we go. So for instance, if you maybe wanted to set something up to take selfies with or take group photos using the timer, you could get like a little tripod like this and put your phone in there and take pictures. Now there are bigger ones that you can get too. There's ones that you can adjust these legs and kind of attach it to like an arm of something, like maybe you were attaching it to like a pole or something.
Or a tree, if you want to catch that bird and you
put it on a branch or something.
Yeah, and there is a remote release too, which is something you can use if if you're attaching it to a tree and you want to get a picture of a bird in the tree. A lot of them have a remote release where it basically works just like that timer button on your camera, where you can just hit the button on the little release that you have in your hand and it'll take the picture of the bird in the tree.
Yep. There's so many different camera accessories out there.
Yeah. You
can really go wild. Like this one has this little shutter button that I believe is activated with Bluetooth.
Yeah, that's the remote release. Yep. For the phone one.
I don't.
And again, that means you're more that's a way to stay more stable. So if you have a tripod, your camera is already going to be, your phone is already more stable than if you're using if you're using your hands to stabilize it. And then if you use that remote release, then you don't even have to touch the camera. It's just like as if you had a timer. So then you can easily be in the photo with your friends or family, and you just hit that button once you're ready and everybody else is ready. And then you hit that and it takes the picture.
Yeah, there's really so many things you can do. And we've included some links online on our, let me show the PowerPoint again. Let me share my screen here. Share. Is it showing the PowerPoint?
Not yet. It does say you're screen sharing though.
That's weird. Screen sharing is paused. That's weird. Resume share.
Yeah, go ahead and tap resume share and see if that'll.
I'm trying, it's not letting me. Let me do a new share.
Okay.
Okay, is that showing it?
Yes, now I can see the front of the podcast. Or sorry, the front of the PowerPoint.
Let me go and show that image of some of the accessories.
All technology things that start with the letter P, right?
I hope you can see the slide, but it's got some of the accessories we talked about, like the selfie stick, and then some of the brands. I think yours is Alo Clip. Is that what you have?
I don't even remember what that one was.
It says for digital camera and mobile phone. It doesn't say.
Yeah.
It says lens.
And again, there's lots of different brands out there. There's lots of different price ranges for stuff like this too. I encourage you to go out and kind of look and see what best fits for you and what best fits for your your price range of what you want to spend or what you want to explore and experience. And again, a lot of the stuff to just start out, it's just you've already got a phone with a camera on it. Go have fun.
That's the main thing.
Yes.
And also I recommend getting a case for your phone if you don't have one already. I know I tend to drop my phone sometimes, and it really saves, getting a cracked screen and potentially cracking your camera. Mm-hmm. I have a phone case on my phone, and it's got like the case is built out just a little bit so that if I drop it, it's not going to fall right on the screen. It's going to fall on the case.
Yeah.
Especially and I have on the back too.
I have one that, I don't know. I'll let me stop. Yeah.
Let me stop spotlight sharing.
On yours. We'll stop sharing. Mine has an actual strap, like a wrist strap on it on my case so that I can put it on my wrist. And then if I do drop it out of my hands, it's still on my wrist. So it's not going to drop to the ground. And I've definitely used this when I travel, and I appreciate having this wrist strap for it. So I don't know if you can actually see that, Rebecca. Can everybody see?
I'm trying to stop my share. I don't know why it's not doing it.
Let me remove the spotlight. Maybe that. I don't know. Well, anyway.
I got it. There we go.
There we go. So I have
technical difficulties.
Yeah. So I have a wrist strap here that I can use. So when I'm, when I'm doing stuff and photographing things or people or whatever, I'm often doing it like this, where I still have it on my wrist. I also do that just when I'm playing games on my phone, because I would tend to drop it otherwise.
For preferences about tripods, there is one I think called the Gorilla Pod. Mm-hmm. That's really cool, where you can kind of manipulate the arms and legs, and again, you can clamp it to things. You can strap it to branches, poles. It's really cool.
And there are different versions that are magnetic too. So like Gorilla Pads has a magnetic version, so it can magnetize to things. You just want to be careful about the weight. Because if your if your phone with case and everything else is pretty heavy, you do want to make sure you get a tripod that can handle the weight of your phone and case. So
I put that in the
yeah, and that one's one of those, and there's a lot of them that are out there. I think there's another thing called Splat, I think, which is another one that's like rubber. It's like rubberized, but it's also a tripod that you can use. And
let me look up and see.
They're kind of fun. And most of these are sold just in like, tech stores. You can find them at places like Target, anywhere like that too.
Or online, like B&H Photos is pretty standard photography website where you can buy like cameras and accessories.
Yeah. And for phones, a lot of places will have it for phones, because most of us have phones, and they are the cameras we use, because the best camera we have is the camera that's with us. And most of us carry our phones just about everywhere. So,
yeah. And then let's also go over, I don't think we talked about considerations, but let's go over that as well.
Yeah, that's this is where I just say, here are some cool things that I recommend.
Let me share my screen if it'll work.
Yeah, so, and we have a question about ring lights. So yes, ring lights. So ring lights are typically used a lot for people who do video, especially social media videos.
Let me get ours.
And we have two different kinds here. This is our standing one that goes on our desk for when we do things like these webinars. And then we also have a smaller one that's across the top of the monitor, but that one also can be used with phones. So it can attach to a phone too. So if you want to create a situation where you have more light on your subject that you're either recording or taking pictures of, you can use things like this, which are called ring lights.
Yeah. Yes, we use this one pretty often if we're here and we want the overhead light off, but we want ourselves to be illuminated. I don't use it that often, but a lot of the other librarians will use that one.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it's good for video conferencing too. I think
yes,
ring lights have been very commonly used and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay. But let me show that considerations thing again. Share.
And I do want to say, I don't think I put, oh yeah, I did. I put clean your gear. Oh, good. I'm glad I put that in there.
Okay, can you see that?
Yes. So these are just some phone and tablet considerations coming from, I guess, sort of best practices from other people that are out there too, as well as us. Practice with your angles. Get close, get far away, get close and flip, whatever you want to do. Again, think about how your subject looks on the horizontal, how it looks on the vertical. So landscape or portrait. Generally, I personally love using the rule of thirds, but there are lots of people who don't like the rule of thirds and will break that rule of thirds.
Let me show a rule of thirds photo because I think we have one.
Sure, yeah.
That has
it's
like
probably
an example.
In that same. Yep, it's probably in that same slide. I especially use it for horizon lines just because I'm not great at picking out horizon lines otherwise. So I use it a lot for making sure that I've got straight angles. And if you're taking pictures of things like architecture, architecture is going to have kind of a diagonal look to it anyway. So getting your rule of thirds in there to help you kind of make it look more natural is also kind of a nice way to help with
slide.
That. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So here's kind of the idea of the rule of thirds. So you move your center, your subject is the sailboat. So it's a little bit off center. It's often that far quadrant there. I guess it's not a quadrant because it's not four, but off on the far side there. So
it's kind of cool with this one, especially because you might think that your subject is the sailboat, but you're also capturing like the environment that you're in, and you're balancing the colors and the horizon line with the like water. It's really cool that you can do that with photography.
Yep. And again, it's a composition choice, right? So you could, if you were taking this with your phone, you could pinch and zoom in so that you're getting much more just that sailboat. But here it's more of an atmosphere. It's more, if you're on vacation and you're wanting to show a photo of like, what did it actually look like where we were, you could zoom out and take this bigger shot. So again, that's getting close and getting far away. So.
And it might be a little different than what everybody's taking because, right, your instinct is to just zoom in and just get that sailboat. But if you kind of take a step back and get some perspective on it, you might get a more interesting and dynamic photo.
Yeah. And again, taking things from different angles too. So, again, with those spring flowers, maybe instead of taking a picture of the flowers, right, so you can see every part of the flower, maybe you get in real close and take pictures of the bottom of a petal. It just depends on what this is where that creativity can really flourish. It's what strikes you about the thing that interests you. The other suggestions for, I was going to say the one other suggestion here is, if you're in a situation where you don't know settings to use and it seems complicated, go ahead and shoot on auto if you need to. It's better to shoot on auto and get a shot that you like than to mess with all your settings and miss the shot that you wanted. So, go ahead and fall back on auto if you need to. Cleaning your gear. So this is something I really recommend, especially your your camera on your phone. How many of us have actually cleaned the camera on our phone? And yet we set it on tables, we set it, in purses, we set it everywhere, it gets
fingerprints all over mine.
It gets fingerprint. Yeah. So just keep in mind, and you can use the same thing you would use to clean your glasses. If you wear glasses, just a lens cleaner and a cloth would be fine.
I would say stay away from anything that has alcohol in it because it might strip some of the protection that your lens has on it.
Yes. So you want, and stay away from things that might scratch the lens too. So, microfiber is probably a good idea, but you want to stay away from things like paper towels or, things like that. And then practice. So if the photography bug bites you like it has me and I think Rebecca as well, just get out there and practice, take pictures of things, whatever you find interesting. So, and again, she's right though, do take into account photography policies at various places too. So to be considerate.
I know I've been at the Art Institute a lot and had a lot of the docents yell at people for taking pictures with their flash. And usually museums will have signs and you can always ask people, hey, can I take a photo here? And they will tell you whether or not you can. Because usually you can as long as you don't have a flash on. If anybody has any questions or wants to see me demonstrate anything, I'd be happy to show something again. Let me put up this slide of additional resources, and this will also be in your handout as well. I just put up some links from Apple has some good pages on how to take and edit photos with like your iPhone and your iPad. They also have some pages about the features of your camera. I'm sure that Android and Samsung, and they have all those pages too. There are a couple websites that do have just stuff on advanced photography tips for your mobile device. There is also a LinkedIn Learning course. If you have a Champaign card, you can take a course called Photography Foundations Mobile Photography. So there are actually classes being crafted around taking pictures on your phone.
And that one does do both Android and iOS devices too, which I appreciate about it.
Yes. And also we have Libby has magazines now, and they have tons of photography magazines on Libby. And I don't believe there's any time limit that you can keep those. You can check them out anytime. Check that out. I will peruse photography magazines sometimes to get ideas or just refresh some tips. They usually give some kind of crash course stuff. If you're trying to recreate an image, they might tell you how to recreate it.
There's also, we do also have access to like an iPhone magazine through Libby too, which sometimes will have features on, using the cameras as well. So I am a big fan of that LinkedIn Learning course though. I've definitely watched a bunch of those episodes. Yes. And they're pretty short too. So you don't have to commit a lot of time to them either.
Any questions so far? I'm going to put up some stuff that's coming up also. And we can always answer questions too if you want to unmute your microphone.
Yes,
just raise your hand.
Yep, I can pull up the attendee list in case anyone would like to ask a question out loud. You can just go ahead and raise your hand and then I can unmute you if you want.
And also coming up, we're doing Intro to Microsoft Excel and PowerPoint. And then we have a graphic design webinar coming up about Canva, which is a really simple and easy to use graphic design software. I've used it a couple times. It's really fun to use. I recommend that class.
Yes. And that is taught by an outside presenter. That's taught by Liza Winnett. She's a great instructor.
She's so good. So. And I will put up our info as well. So if you want to contact us later about any question you might have, or we can email you, call you, whatever works for you.
And I also want you to know that we do have, if you want to watch it up on our YouTube channel, we do have an entire webinar devoted to Photoshop, the Photoshop app, which does a lot of editing. And our instructor for that, also a really great instructor, she goes into lots of detail about how to edit the photos. So if you are looking for more of the editing things, that's one that you can find on our YouTube channel. And she will be coming back to do it again in May too.
I can show how to get to that as well. If you're on our website, champaign.org, there is a link. Can you see that right on the front page?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right on the front page, it says webinars on YouTube. You can also access it if you scroll down to the bottom of our page and click on the little square with the play button on it. That will jump you to our YouTube page as well. So if this link ever goes away, you can always access it down here. So if I click on it, then it will bring us to the YouTube channel where I can browse playlists, or I can just kind of browse through the content that we have. We have so much stuff, so I recommend kind of going on there and seeing what's available.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, I know that was quite a long program, but I had a lot of fun teaching it.
Yes, thanks for sticking with it. We did go a little over this time. This one is normally 2 hours in person, so
yes.
Yeah. And hopefully you had some fun. For those of you who did try it out along with us, taking pictures of some of your nearby objects and things to take pictures of. Yes, some of our more stationary subjects.
He just kind of plops down and doesn't
willing
move.
And stationary. Yeah. I suppose my cats would count for most of the day because they sleep in the sunshine. So
I have so many cat photos.
Fairly stationary for most of the day, and I do practice my photography on them when they're sleeping.
I do as well. I have probably hundreds of cat photos.
So, all right. Well, if there are no final questions, I want to thank everyone for coming today. And again, we do have Microsoft Excel and PowerPoint in April. We'll have 2 sessions on each. And then in May, we'll have the Apple computers and Windows computers and those things again. So,
yeah, you can always go to champaign.org/events, and then our whole calendar is listed there.
Mm-hmm. And if you want to rewatch this too, we'll be sending out the follow-up email pretty soon. And that will also have answers to some of the questions in the chat and a link to the video recording, as well as the handout.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. It was fun.
Bye.